Hello all, welcome to another quick learning. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to do some codecademy exercises, learning Python. So this is going to be very basic. I believe I haven't done this yet. And I'm no means an expert in Python, but I thought it would give you guys a good start if you're very much a beginner and just trying to get into Python and trying to get some confidence in doing it. Just having me go through it and you kind of joining along. So you can set up an account by going to codecademy.com. It's actually pretty easy. You can use your Facebook or Gmail account to set it up. Once you set it up, so they're really trying to push the paid courses. They do have some free courses like the one that I'm going to be doing. It can be a little hard to find them though. So the easiest way is kind of go to codecademy.com/learn Python, I think. That will be the easiest way to find it. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and we'll see how this goes. So they're starting out with a hello world link in most programming courses. So hello world. If programming is the act of teaching a computer to have a conversation with a user, it would be most useful to first teach the computer how to speak. In Python, this is accomplished with the print statement. So you can see print hello world, print blah blah blah, and then it will print that to the console. A print statement is the easiest way to get your Python program to communicate with you. Being able to command this communication will be one of the most valuable tools in your programming toolbox. And it actually is kind of valuable because it helps you debug a lot of times your code. If you can print different variables and things to see what the values that they contain. Using the print statement, I'll put a message of your choosing to the terminal. All right, let's just do hello world, I guess. I will note, so this is Python 2, 2.6, 2.7 syntax. In Python 3, they put parentheses in the print statement. So I don't know if this will actually work, but we'll see. And it does. So if you're using Python 3, so anything like 3.5, 3.6 or something like that, it will give you an error if you don't put these parentheses in. That's something to know. Print statements. There are two different Python versions. Both Python 2 and Python 3 are used throughout the globe. The most significant difference between the two is how you write a print statement. So I kind of just went over this. So the instructions print something using Python 3 syntax. So just like I said, they're just reiterating. So like I said, I didn't go through this. So I'll be learning kind of this along with you guys. Strings. When printing things in Python, we are supplying a text block that we want to be printed. Text in Python is considered a specific type of data called a string. A string so named because they're a series of letters, numbers, or symbols connected in order, as if threaded together by string. Strings can be defined in different ways. So you can see in Python you've got the string and it's got the double quotation marks or the single apostrophe encompassing them. You can do it either way. And I guess that's what they say here. Sorry about that. We can contribute multiple strings combine multiple strings using plus, like so. The code will print out this is a good string. Try adding your name to the print statement with a plus operator so that this Python program prints hello plus your name. So I'm just going to, after this, put hello, and then I'll put Aaron. My first name is Aaron. So it already puts the space in there. So if you don't include that space, it'll put them right together. And I'll run that. Hello, Aaron. All right. It's all pretty simple so far. Handling errors. As we get more familiar with Python programming language, we run into errors and exceptions. These are complaints that Python makes when it doesn't understand what you want it to do. Everyone runs into these issues, so it's a good habit to read and understand them. Here are some common errors that we might run into when printing strings. Mismatched quotes. So if you use the double quote and then the single apostrophe, that will cause an error. If the quotes are mismatched, blah, blah, blah. Inform you the code has an error in its syntax because the line ended, called in end of line. Before the double quote that was supposed to close, the string appeared. The program will abruptly stop running in the following message. This means that a string wasn't closed or wasn't closed with the same quote character that it started. So one way to kind of see that is you'll see that if you're using some sort of code editor, it will color code things. So you can see this parenthesis here is color-coded yellow, which means it's still part of this string. So if I instead close this out and then put that there, you can see now this is back to white. So your code editor can give you some hints on where you might have made a mistake. And another issue you might run into attempting to create a string without quotes at all. Python treats words not in quotes as commands, like the print statement. If it fails to recognize these words as defined in Python or by your program elsewhere, Python will complain the code has a name error. This means that Python found what it thinks is a command but doesn't know what it means because it's not defined anywhere. We've written two print statements that will raise errors. One has mismatched quotes and the other has no quotes at all. Fixed them. Okay, so I already fixed the first one. We'll just do single quotes for this one. Sometimes your editor kind of does things you don't want it to do, like putting in double quotation marks. But I think that should fix it. And then if we run it, there we go. It printed out both of those statements, so that should be good. All right, variables. In Python, when programming in general, we need to build systems for dealing with data that changes over time. That data could be the location of a plane, or the day of time, or the television show you're currently watching. The only important thing is that it may be different at different times. Python uses variables to define things that are subject to change. So here you got greeting message, which is equal to this string, welcome to Codecademy. And you have current exercise, which is equal to this integer, which is 5. So in the above example, we defined a variable called greeting message and sent it equal to the string, welcome to Codecademy. Also defined a variable called current exercise and set it equal to the number 5. So now it wants me to create a variable called today's date. Today's date. Oh, I didn't spell it quite right. Equals, and assign a value that will represent today's date to that variable. And so I forget what I think it's DateTime.now is, but then you'd have to import. Oh, I see what they want. So you can do a system date, but you have to import a package called DateTime. But I guess it just wants me to give a string that'll define today's date. It's September 21st, 2018. How about that? Let's go ahead and run that. Okay, next. Arithmetic. One thing computers are capable of doing exceptionally well is performing arithmetic. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and other numeric calculations are easy to do in most programming languages, and Python is no exception. Some examples. So we got addition here, which is just as you expect, subtraction, multiplication, division. Division will work a little bit differently than you would expect because if you do integer divided by integer here, it's going to give you an integer, whether that should be a decimal or not. The variable will hold the final result of each operation. Combinations of arithmetic operators follow the usual order of operations. Python also offers a companion to division called the Modulo operator. The Modulo operator is indicated by the % sign and returns the remainder after division is performed. So here 15 modulo 2 is going to return 1 because after you divide 15 by 2, 7 goes into that evenly, and then you've got 1 left over. So it's the concept of the remainder that you would find you've done in like long division in preschool and that. In the above code block, we use the modulo operator to find the remainder of 15 divided by 2. Since 15 is an odd number, the remainder is 1. We also check the remainder of 133 divided by 7. Since 133 divided by 7 has no remainder, it evaluates to 0. Okay, so they want me to multiply two numbers together and assign the result to a variable called product. So first we're going to say product equals, means it's giving it the assignment, and we'll just say 2 times 2. And if we run that, that's good. What is the remainder when 1398 is divided by 11? Save the results in a variable called remainder. So again, we're going to start by putting in remainder, and equal means you're assigning it to that. And then 1398 modulo 11 to get the remainder of that division. Ooh, we didn't like it. What is the remainder when 1398 is divided by 11? Save the results. I'm kind of interested in why I didn't like that. Did I spell it wrong? Let's just copy and paste. Here, run it again. Now it liked it. I must have spelled it wrong. And then we can go on to the next section. Updating variables. Changing the contents of a variable is one of the essential operations. As the flow of a program progresses, data should be updated to reflect changes that have happened. So the example is they assign fish in Clark's pond equal to 50, and then they print catching fish, and then number of fish caught equals 10, and then they subtract the original number minus the number of fish caught to get the new number for the fish in the pond. And so then it just kind of explains what it did, what I just did. And then updating a variable, adding or subtracting a number to the original contents of the variable has its own shorthand to make it faster and easier to read. So yeah, so first it assigns it 40, and then the sandwich price 7.5, and then it assigns sales tax based on the sandwich price. And then, so what this does is it takes the sandwich price, which is $7.50, and it adds the sales tax, which I'm not sure what it is here calculated. Can't do that in my head, but it's adding whatever this result is to $7.50. And then money in the wallet, it's subtracting the 40 from whatever this result was. Like I said, in the above example, we use the price of a sandwich to calculate sales tax, and after calculating tax, we add it to the total price of the sandwich. Finally, we complete the transaction by reducing our money in wallet by the cost of the sandwich with tax. All right, we're trying to figure out how much it rained in the past year. Update the annual rainfall variable to include the values from September to December. Let's see what we have here. So January to June rainfall, and it's assigned it, I'm guessing this is the monthly totals all added up. And then it says annual rainfall equals this. Obviously they need more information after that. July rainfall, they add July rainfall to what's already there, and then August to what's already there. And now what they want is to add the values of September through December. And we're going to do it, plus equals. So it's going to take what's already in annual rainfall, and it's going to add what's ever over here. So we'll just copy and paste these. So I'm just going to go Control C, Control V, plus, you could do all these in separate lines if you wanted to. I'm just going to do them all together. November, and then finally December. Control C, Control V. Let's run that. It looks like we got that correct, so we can go on to the next. Comments. Comments, most of the time, code should be written in such a way that it's easy to understand on its own. However, if you want to include a piece of information to explain a part of your code, you can use the pound sign. A line of text preceded by a pound is called a comment. The machine does not run this code. It is only for humans to read. When you look back at your code later, comments may help you figure out what it was intended to do. So you can see here, it's got a comment here, which you can tell because it's followed by this. Also, your code editor will put it in a different color than the rest of the text. So add a comment above the declaration of city pop with a description of what you think the variable contains. All right. Population of city. Let's run that. Shouldn't be any errors because it doesn't actually execute any of this. All right, numbers. Variables can also hold numeric values. The simplest kind of number in Python is the integer, which is a whole number with no decimal point. And it just gives some examples. A number with a decimal point is called a float. You can define floats with numbers after the decimal point by just including a decimal point at the end. So you can see here, you're defining a float here. If you just put 1, it'll hold it as an integer. Again here, 10. If you don't put that decimal point, it'll hold it as an integer, which you may not want because of the way that it does division on integers. You may also define a float using scientific notation with e indicating the power of 10. So here it's 1.5 e to the second, which is equal to 150. So it's basically 1.5 times 10 to the second, if you prefer that notation. You're going shopping. Let's make a grocery list so you can plan your budget. Store the number of cucumbers you want to buy in a variable called cucumbers. Make sure it's at least 1 and that it's the appropriate data type. The store doesn't sell partial cucumbers. So cucumbers equals, let's say 2. And we're not going to put a decimal point because it's saying there's no partial cucumbers, so it's always going to be an integer. And let's run that. Each cucumber costs 3.25 doubloons. Store the price per cucumber in a variable called price per cucumber. All right, we're going to go price per cucumber equals 3.25. It's all pretty simple. Create a new variable called total cost. Total cost, which is the product of how many cucumbers you're going to buy and the cost per cucumber. All right, cucumbers times price per cucumber. Let's run that. All right, print out total cost. What data type is it? And then total cost. So you don't need the quotation marks because this is a variable that you're putting into the print statement. 6.5, so this is a float, because when you multiply an integer by a float, it's going to give you back a float. 2 types of a division. In Python 2, when we divide 2 integers, we get an integer as a result. When the quotient is a whole number, this works fine. So 3 divided by 2 is going to give you, 6 divided by 2 is going to give you 3, which is no problem. However, the numbers do not divide evenly. The result of the division is truncated into an integer. In other words, the quotient is rounded down to a whole number. This can be surprising when you expect to receive a decimal and you receive a rounded down integer. So 7 divided by 2, because you've specified both integers, it's going to try and give you back an integer, so it's actually going to give you 3 instead of 3.5. So that's a good thing to know if you're using Python 2. You're going to get this kind of behavior. To yield a float as the result instead, programmers often change either the numerator or the denominator or both to be a float. So 7.2 or 7 divided by 2 point, just so one of them is, at least one of them is a float. An alternative way is to use the float method. So yeah, if you specify float as a method, and then you put 7 or the variable name in it, and it's an integer, then it will change that 7 integer into a float. You have come home from the grocery store with 100 cucumbers to split amongst yourself and your 5 roommates, 6 people total. Create a variable cucumbers that holds 100 and num people that holds 6. All right, so we got cucumbers equals 100, num people equals 6. I think that's all they want now. Got the green check, so I know that it's correct. Create a variable called whole cucumbers per person, and that is the integer result of dividing cucumbers by number of people. All right. Actually, I'm just gonna copy and paste this because it's kind of long and I don't want to get it wrong. Equals cucumbers divided by num people. Go ahead and run that, and it says it's okay. You realize that the numbers don't divide evenly and you don't want to throw out the remaining cucumbers. Create a variable called float cucumbers per person that holds the float result of dividing cucumbers by number of people. Print float cucumbers per person to the console. Okay, so we're going to grab this on a new line. We're going to assign that. We're going to do float cucumbers divided by num people, because at least one of them has to be a float in order to get a float back. And then we're going to print this variable. See if we did that correctly. Yes, we did, and we got 16.666 repeating. So 16 2/3. All right, so multiline strings. We have seen how to define a string with single quotes and with double quotes. If we want a string to span multiple lines, we can also use triple quotes. So here's an example, address string. So the string, they're assigning this string over multiple lines, and they're able to do that because they put the triple quotes. This address spans multiple lines and is still contained in one variable address string. When a variable like this is not assigned to a variable, it works as a multi-line comment. This can be helpful as your code gets more complex. So if it's not assigned to a variable like this, then it's just treated as a comment. It's like putting that pound sign in front of each line. So they want me to create a variable haiku, and in this variable they want me to store as a multi-line haiku, old pond, comma, frog jumps in plop. And that worked. All right, booleans. Sometimes we have a need for variables that are either true or false. This data type, which can only ever take one of two values, is called a boolean. In Python, we define booleans using the keywords true. Make sure you have capital T there, and these in lowercase, and false, capital F, the rest lowercase. So here they're just assigning A true, B false. A boolean is actually a special case of an integer. A value of true corresponds to an integer value of 1 and will behave the same. The value of false corresponds to an integer value of 0. Someone has introduced themselves to you using comments in script.py. So that's the extension for a Python file. Read the comments and then create a variable called age is 12 and set it to be true or false depending on this person's age. Is 12. All right, age is 12. Is it true or false? It looks like it's false because she's 21. And that is correct. Create a variable called name is Maria and set it to true or false depending on if this person's name is Maria. Looks like in the first sentence, or second sentence, I guess, that her name is Maria. So that would be true. All right, that's it for that. Value error. Python automatically assigns a variable the appropriate data type based on the value it is given. A variable with the value 6 is or 7 is an integer, 7 is a float, 7 with quotation marks is a string, so 7 period is a float. Sometimes we will want to convert variables to different data types. For example, if we wanted to type out an integer as part of a string, we'd want to convert that integer to a string first. We can do that using str, so this is a method that converts to a string. So here they're assigning 13 to the age variable, print I am, so just a string that says I am with a space, plus string age. So age is set as an integer, so if we want to include it in this string, we have to first change it to the string variable type, and then you just add on years old. So then it would just print I am 13 years old. Similarly, we have a string length 7, and we want to perform arithmetic operations on it. We must convert it to a numeric data type. We can do this using int. You could also use float. So number 1, they're putting this string of 100, and number 2, they're putting a string of 10. So if they want to add these in a numeric way, then they would have to convert those into ints. So what this is going to do in this case, it's going to do string addition. So you're going to get 100, and then it's going to put 10 after it, just like this, because it's just going to combine the two strings. And then if you want to do the addition arithmetically, you convert them to integers or floats by putting int or float in the method and then adding them up, and then this would give you 110. If you use int on a floating point number, it will round the number down. To preserve the decimal, you can use float. So here we go. This is a string of 7.5. If you print out the integer, it's only going to give you 7 because it's just going to get rid of anything after the decimal point. A float will give you the full number. All right, so now the instructions are: create a variable called product that contains the result of multiplying the float values of float 1 and float 2. Float 1 times float 2. All right, and that float 1 is not defined. Did I spell that wrong? Let's see, float 1. Oh, they got the underscore. For some reason I missed that. what? Float 1, float 2. It says create a variable called product that contains the result of multiplying the float value of float 1 and float 2. Did I misspell this? I don't know. All right, so that's the solution. And then for big string, they wanted to do the product was, and then just convert that product to a string so you can add it to a string. I'm not sure where I went wrong on this one, but I probably had a spelling mistake or something. That's one of the things that can be frustrating when you're just beginning, is you don't know what kind of error you're making. All right, so great. So far we've looked at print statements, how to create, modify, and use variables, arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication, how to use comments to make your code easy to understand, different data types, including strings, ints, floats, and booleans, converting between data types. All right, so that's kind of where I'm going to end this first part. You can come back and see the other parts of Codecademy's Learn Python section. You can see that even I make mistakes. It's pretty easy to make mistakes, generally spelling the variable names wrong and things like that, or just making some sort of syntax error. But I hope you guys learned something and you weren't screaming at the screen saying you're doing it wrong. But all right, thank you very much. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.